The raw, unforgiving sun of New Mexico had barely begun its ascent, painting the vast plains in hues of bruised peach and pale gold when she appeared. Dust coated her like a second skin, clinging to her disheveled hair and the worn fabric of her simple dress. Her bare feet, toughened by an unknown journey, pressed into the cracked earth of the Piedra Serena Ranch Trail, each step a silent testament to endurance. She stopped, not at the gate, but at the weathered fence line, her gaze fixed with an unnerving intensity on the horses grazing peacefully within. Their powerful forms, sleek and restless, seemed to mirror a spirit caged. Old Asa McCrae, his weathered hands accustomed to the heft of a rifle more than the touch of human companionship since his wife's passing, saw her from his porch. His immediate instinctual reaction was to reach for the familiar weight of his firearm, a silent guardian against the unknown that often encroached upon his solitary existence. But something in the young woman's posture, a strange blend of vulnerability and unwavering resolve in her eyes, arrested his movement. It was a look that spoke not of threat, but of a profound, almost elemental connection to the land itself. He lowered the gun, a flicker of curiosity overriding decades of ingrained caution. The nearby village, clinging to its own rigid doctrines, had already cast its judgment, branding her a witch, a harbinger of ill fortune. Asa, however, saw something else, something that resonated with the quiet ache in his own soul. He decided to call her Anna. This simple act, born of a moment's intuition, would ripple outwards, altering the landscape of their lives and the lives of everyone touched by the dusty winds of the region. Asa, a man carved from the stoic traditions of Presbyterian faith, lived a life of quiet devotion on the fringes of Taos, his ranch nestled near a trail that still echoed with the spiritual journeys of the Mescalero Apaches. In the eyes of his community, a place where conformity was paramount and deviation met with swift condemnation, offering refuge to Anna, an outsider, a cipher with no known family, no traceable history, and an unsettling familiarity with plants and the subtle language of omens, was akin to inviting divine wrath upon them all. Yet Asa harbored his own deeper reasons for this act of quiet defiance. Since his daughter Mabel had departed for the distant allure of the East, a profound silence had descended upon his home, leaving him adrift in a landscape of emotional ashes. Anna, with her observant, curious, and profoundly restrained manner, began to fill that void. She spoke little of her past, offering no explanation for her presence, yet her quiet intelligence and the way she seemed to absorb the world around her with an almost palpable intensity offered a solace he hadn't realized he desperately needed. Anna, in turn, carried within her a constellation of striking traits that set her apart. She possessed an almost preternatural sensitivity to the subtle shifts in nature, the whisper of an approaching storm, the silent language of wilting leaves, the hidden life within the soil. This connection to the natural world was coupled with a quiet, unnerving intelligence that often left those who encountered her feeling a prickle of unease, as if she saw more than she revealed. Her determination, however, was perhaps her most defining characteristic, a fierce, unwavering resolve that burned even when her body trembled with an underlying fear. The greatest conflict within her, a silent war waged in the depths of her being, was the profound shame of her origins, a secret she guarded fiercely, refusing to reveal it to anyone, not even to Asa, despite her deep gratitude for his unexpected kindness. The fear of rejection, a ghost that had haunted her through other places, other attempts at belonging, kept her silent. The whispers, as they inevitably do in close-knit communities, began to spread like wildfire. A chicken disappeared from a backyard. Mrs. Gladys's well inexplicably ran dry. A horse was spooked by the merest whisper of wind. Each minor disruption, each unsettling occurrence was seized upon as irrefutable proof that Anna, the outsider, the one who walked barefoot and spoke to the plants, was the source of their troubles, the malevolent force disrupting their ordered lives. Reverend Hall, a man whose pronouncements carried the weight of divine authority in the eyes of many, approached Asa, his voice laced with righteous indignation, demanding that he send her away, banish the perceived darkness from their midst. But Asa, his own faith tested by the stillness of his empty house, saw differently. He observed Anna's gentle, almost reverent care for the plants in her small garden, a patch of earth that prior to her touch had yielded only stubborn weeds, but now, under her diligent hands, was sprouting fragrant basil. The first turning point, a subtle shift in the prevailing narrative, arrived not with thunderous pronouncements, but with the quiet miracle of a child's life saved. Ina, using a tea brewed from bitter leaves she had painstakingly gathered from the foot of the mountain, a remedy whispered into existence by her intimate knowledge of the earth's bounty, brought the blacksmith's ailing infant back from the brink of death. This act, a testament to her extraordinary abilities, became the talk of the town, a seed of both fear and fascination planted in the hearts of the villagers. Some continued to fear her, to condemn her. Others, however, began to seek her out, their desperate need overriding their ingrained suspicion. Asa's daughter, Mabel, returned from Santa Fe, her presence a disruption in the fragile peace that had begun to settle. Her objective was clear and unyielding: to have her father committed to an institution, to seize control of the ranch, her inheritance. She dismissed Anna as a charlatan, a manipulative force preying on her father's weakened state. During her stay, in the quiet hours when Asa was lost in his own contemplations, Mabel discovered Anna's notebooks, filled with intricate drawings of plants, their medicinal properties meticulously detailed, and maps adorned with indigenous symbols, hinting at a past far more complex than anyone suspected. The second twist in their unfolding story arrived on a night of tempestuous fury. The wind howling like a mournful spirit, the rain lashing against the windows. Mabel, her resolve hardened by her discoveries, confronted Anna, her voice sharp with accusation, demanding that she leave the ranch, that she cease her corrupting influence. Their heated confrontation was abruptly halted by an insistent, rhythmic knocking at the door. 3 Apache elders, their faces etched with the wisdom of generations, stood silhouetted against the storm-lashed night, their presence commanding a solemn respect. They asked, in hushed, resonant tones, to speak with Anna. She hesitated, her gaze flicking towards Asa, a silent plea for his judgment. Asa, his heart a complex mix of apprehension and a growing trust in the young woman he had sheltered, nodded, granting them entry. They presented Anna with a small, smooth stone talisman, its surface cool to the touch, and spoke words that hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. It's time. For weeks that stretched into an eternity for Asa, Anna disappeared into the rugged expanse of the hills. The ranch, which had begun to feel a little less empty, returned to its state of quiet desolation. The whispers among the villagers intensified, fueling speculation that she had finally returned to her tribe, to the people from whom she had emerged. But Asa, who had come to know Anna's quiet strength and the subtle nuances of her being, doubted this narrative. He sensed, with an intuition honed by years of observing the land and its inhabitants, that Anna's origins were far more complex, perhaps spanning 2 worlds, a liminal existence that defied easy categorization. Anna's absence, however, had an unexpected and profound effect on Mabel. Stripped of her usual antagonism, she began to observe her father with a new, unbidden clarity. Without Anna's steadying presence, Asa seemed to unravel. He struggled to recall where he kept the precious seeds for planting, his memory faltering, his grip on names and familiar routines slipping. Little by little, a transformation began to take root within Mabel. She found herself adopting some of the very habits she had so readily dismissed in Anna, preparing herbal teas for Asa's persistent cough, reading aloud to him at dusk, moistening cloths to place on his feverish forehead. It was during one of these quiet acts of care, while sifting through Anna's meager belongings, that she discovered a letter. It was not a confession of guilt, nor a declaration of defiance, but a heartfelt plea for forgiveness, a raw outpouring of a soul grappling with its past. When Anna finally reappeared, emerging from the vastness of the wilderness as silently as she had vanished, something fundamental had shifted within her. Her gaze, once filled with a guarded uncertainty, now held a steady, unshakable firmness. In her hands, she carried a worn leather bag, its contents a mystery, but the weight of it spoke of a significant burden, or perhaps a profound gift. She explained that the elders had entrusted her with dark seeds, seeds that required specific soil and an abundance of silence for their germination. Without hesitation, Asa offered the driest, most neglected field on the ranch, a testament to his unwavering faith in her. With Mabel's reluctant assistance, a grudging truce forming between the two women, they began the arduous task of plowing the soil day after laborious day, the rhythm of their labor a stark contrast to the encroaching unease from the town. The greatest obstacle, however, was yet to materialize. The villagers, their fear amplified by Reverend Hall's impassioned pronouncements, gathered, their collective voice demanding Anna's immediate departure. They accused her of attracting spirits, of consorting with forces that threatened the very fabric of their society, and Asa, for his continued protection of Anna, faced the ultimate threat of excommunication from his church. Faced with this escalating pressure, Anna proposed a daring gamble, a final decisive demonstration of her perceived witchcraft. She would make the barren, unforgiving field bloom within 3 weeks, a task that seemed utterly impossible, a defiance of natural law. Asa, though hesitant, his faith tested once more, agreed to the terms. The third and most significant twist in their intertwined destinies arrived on the morning of the 21st day. As the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, the field, previously a testament to arid desolation, was transformed. It was covered, as far as the eye could see, in a vibrant tapestry of sunflowers, their golden faces turned towards the sun, and an unusual striking blue plant, its delicate petals unfurling with an ethereal beauty. The villagers, drawn by an irresistible curiosity, gathered around the edge of the field, their skepticism momentarily suspended by the sheer, inexplicable wonder before them. Then, a faint sound, muffled by distance, reached their ears, the rhythmic beat of hooves. In the far distance, a procession began to emerge from the hills. 40 Apache warriors, their movements fluid and silent, descended upon the encampment, their presence a silent, powerful affirmation. The chief, his bearing regal and commanding, dismounted his horse, approached Anna with a grace that transcended the mundane, and spoke a name that resonated with a profound, ancient power. Tsala, he declared, his voice carrying across the hushed assembly, a name that meant hidden root. In that singular moment, as the meaning of the name settled upon the assembled onlookers, Asa understood. Anna was not merely a healer, nor simply a fugitive seeking refuge. She was the embodiment of a bridge, a vital missing link between two worlds that had long stood in opposition, a connection that neither side had dared to forge. Her triumph, however, was not without its cost. Mabel, witnessing the profound transformation in her father and the undeniable power of Anna's connection to the land and its ancient peoples, made a choice that would redefine her own future. She relinquished her plans to return to the city, choosing instead to remain at the ranch, to care for her father, sacrificing her old life for a new path, one of quiet devotion and unexpected peace. Asa, for his unwavering defense of Anna, found himself ostracized from his church fellowship, a painful severance from the community he had long served. Yet in the vibrant bloom of the once barren field, in the quiet strength of the young woman he had welcomed, he discovered a new, deeper faith, a profound connection to something far greater than ritual and doctrine. Anna, for her part, finally shed the burden of her past, the shame that had clung to her for so long. She embraced her true identity, becoming an integral part of the land, its ancient rituals, its evolving community, and, at long last, fully and irrevocably herself. The scent of herbs, the creak of wagon wheels, the texture of the earth yielding to the touch, and the warm orange light of dusk permeated every scene, breathing life into the desert landscape, transforming it from mere sand and rock into a character in its own right, a silent witness to the unfolding of a story that would resonate long after the last sunflower had bowed its golden head. This was Anna's story, the story of a young woman called a witch, an old man who dared to see beyond the surface, and 40 warriors who arrived not to conquer, but to offer a silent, profound thanks. The year had turned, bringing with it the crisp air of autumn, a season of both harvest and introspection. The initial shockwaves of Anna's arrival and the subsequent events had settled, leaving in their wake a landscape subtly reshaped by unseen forces. The transformation of the Piedra Serena Ranch was not solely in the blooming field, but in the slow, deliberate recalibration of perception within the community. Consider, for instance, the subtle shift in how the Mescalero Apache elders now viewed Asa. Previously, he was merely a rancher, a neighbor whose isolation was a matter of personal choice. However, their interactions with Anna and through her, their recognition of Asa's quiet integrity and willingness to embrace the unconventional, had fostered a newfound respect. This wasn't a dramatic overture, but a series of small gestures, the passing of a shared nod across the dusty plains, a brief, respectful pause during their spiritual journeys to acknowledge his presence, a silent acknowledgement of a shared stewardship of the land, albeit from vastly different perspectives. Furthermore, their willingness to entrust Anna with the dark seeds, a responsibility steeped in generations of sacred knowledge, underscored a deeper trust that now extended, by extension, to Asa. Building on this evolving dynamic, the concept of community itself began to broaden its definition. For years, the town had operated under a rigid, almost brittle definition of belonging, one predicated on strict adherence to established norms and shared beliefs. Reverend Hall's excommunication, intended to isolate Asa and Anna, had paradoxically created a different kind of unity. Those who had been swayed by Anna's healing touch, those who had witnessed her quiet strength, found themselves drawn together, their shared experience forming a nascent bond. They began to gather not in the formal setting of the church, but in the more informal, natural spaces. The blacksmith's forge, the general store, even the edges of the now blooming field. These gatherings were not about overt rebellion, but about the quiet exchange of observations, the sharing of concerns, and the subtle reinforcement of a nascent alternative worldview. Consequently, the very notion of what constituted accepted knowledge was being questioned, not through argument, but through lived experience. Conversely, Mabel's journey offered a compelling counterpoint to the expanding circles of acceptance. Her initial return was driven by a desire to preserve her perceived inheritance and her father's legacy as she understood it. However, the profound disruption of Anna's presence and the subsequent unraveling of her father's established routines forced Mabel to confront her own assumptions about familial duty and emotional connection. Her meticulous cataloguing of Anna's notebooks, while initially an act of suspicion, became an inadvertent exploration of a different kind of wisdom. She began to see the intricate patterns in Anna's drawings, the historical resonance in the indigenous symbols, not as evidence of witchcraft, but as fragments of a rich, complex tapestry of human knowledge. This internal shift was subtle but significant. She started to recognize that her father's quietude was not solely due to grief, but also a deep-seated contentment derived from Anna's presence, a contentment she herself had been too preoccupied to notice. Another crucial layer to this evolving narrative was the quiet resilience of the land itself. The arid plains of New Mexico were not merely a backdrop, they were an active participant in the unfolding drama. The success of the dark seeds, their vibrant, unexpected bloom, was a stark refutation of the prevailing narrative of scarcity and spiritual barrenness that had held sway. It demonstrated that life and indeed prosperity could emerge from seemingly impossible conditions, provided the right conditions and the right stewardship were applied. Now consider how this applies when you face a situation where established systems seem to fail you. The lesson here is that new growth often requires a departure from conventional methods, an embrace of the unconventional, and a willingness to trust in processes that defy immediate explanation. The land, in its silent, persistent way, was teaching a lesson in adaptation and the inherent potential for renewal, a lesson that resonated deeply with Anna's own journey of self-discovery. The winter months, a period of hushed stillness and stark beauty, brought with them a profound introspection for both Asa and Mabel, a quiet reckoning with the roles they now occupied. Asa, no longer bound by the rigid dictates of his former church fellowship, found a new form of spiritual communion, not in sermons, but in the silent, patient observation of the land's dormant power. His days were marked by a meticulous tending of the dormant plants Anna had introduced, a ritualistic care that mirrored her own devotion. He learned to read the subtle signs of life beneath the frost-hardened earth, to anticipate the spring thaw not with anxious expectation, but with a deep, ingrained understanding of nature's cyclical rhythm. This period was not one of idleness, but of a profound internal recalibration, where the lessons of resilience, learned through Anna's presence and the land's stoic endurance, began to permeate his very being. Consider how this applies when you face a period of enforced stillness or personal exile from familiar structures. It's often in these quiet, unscripted moments that a deeper, more authentic connection to one's inner compass can be forged, revealing strengths previously hidden by the demands of outward conformity. Mabel, too, found herself navigating a complex internal landscape. Her initial hostility towards Anna had softened, replaced by a grudging respect that gradually blossomed into a more profound appreciation. The meticulous study of Anna's notebooks had unlocked a new dimension of understanding, not just of medicinal plants, but of a worldview that valued interconnectedness and subtle observation. She began to see her father not as a man to be managed, but as an individual with his own quiet needs and a deep wellspring of affection, now expressed in his tending of Anna's burgeoning garden. This shift in perspective allowed her to engage with him on a more genuine level, moving beyond the transactional nature of their previous relationship. Now, when she helped him prepare the herbal teas, it was not out of obligation, but out of a newfound understanding of their restorative properties, a shared practice that subtly reinforced their familial bond. Furthermore, her efforts to decipher the indigenous symbols within Anna's notes, though initially a forensic exercise, evolved into an exploration of ancestral wisdom, a recognition of the enduring legacy of those who had walked these lands for millennia. The Apache elders, observing the quiet persistence of Asa and Mabel in nurturing the dormant seeds, offered their own form of guidance, a subtle reinforcement of the lessons Anna was already imparting. Their visits became less about specific instructions and more about shared presence, a silent acknowledgement of the shared responsibility in cultivating this new life. They would sometimes bring offerings of dried herbs, their fragrance a testament to their own deep knowledge of the land's provision, leaving them near the field where the seeds lay waiting. This act, while seemingly small, represented a significant cultural exchange, a bridging of worlds through shared reverence for the natural order. It underscored the principle that true community is built not on uniformity of belief, but on mutual respect for differing traditions and a shared commitment to a common purpose, even if that purpose is as simple as ensuring the survival of a fragile sapling. Moreover, the encroaching winter provided a stark visual metaphor for the internal struggles and transformations underway. The bare branches of the cottonwood trees, stripped of their leaves, spoke of vulnerability, of shedding the superfluous to reveal the essential core. The frozen surface of the nearby creek, once a vibrant artery of life, represented a period of suspended animation, a necessary pause before the resurgence of spring. This natural cycle served as a constant, silent reminder that periods of apparent dormancy or difficulty were not indicative of an end, but rather a crucial phase in a larger, ongoing process of growth and renewal. Consider how this applies when you find yourself in a season of personal challenge or uncertainty. The natural world offers a profound example that periods of apparent stagnation are often precursors to vigorous new growth, a time for consolidating inner resources before the outward expression of that strength. The land, in its quiet, unyielding way, was teaching patience, perseverance, and the enduring power of hope, even in the face of apparent desolation. The arrival of spring, heralded by the hesitant unfurling of new leaves and the return of migratory birds, brought with it an undeniable sense of anticipation. The field, once a stark expanse of dormant earth, now pulsed with vibrant life. Sunflowers, their faces wide and golden, stretched towards the heavens, a riotous display of nature's resilience. Interspersed amongst them, the unusual blue plant, its delicate petals, a startling contrast against the verdant backdrop, seemed to whisper secrets of the earth's hidden vitality. This burgeoning life was not merely a visual spectacle. It was a potent symbol of transformation, a tangible refutation of the fear and suspicion that had gripped the community. Now consider how this applies when you encounter a situation where established beliefs seem to falter in the face of undeniable evidence. The lesson here is to observe the tangible outcomes, to acknowledge the reality of what has been achieved, rather than clinging to outdated prejudices. The spectacle of the field blooming served as a powerful non-verbal argument, compelling even the most hardened skeptics to pause and reconsider their judgments. Beyond the immediate visual impact, the scent of the blooming plants began to permeate the very air of the region, a fragrant testament to Anna's unique understanding of the earth's medicinal properties. This olfactory presence was more than just pleasant. It was a subtle yet persistent reminder of the restorative power inherent in the natural world, a power that Anna had tapped into with such profound efficacy. The blacksmith's child, revived by Anna's herbal tea, represented a tangible victory over despair, a beacon of hope in the face of what had seemed an insurmountable challenge. The ripple effect of this single act of healing extended far beyond the blacksmith's family, fostering a growing sense of awe and a hesitant curiosity amongst those who had previously condemned Anna. It demonstrated that true wisdom often lies not in the pronouncements of authority, but in the quiet, diligent observation and application of natural laws. The arrival of the Apache warriors, their silent procession down from the hills, marked a critical juncture in the narrative, a turning point that transcended mere local concerns. Their presence was not an invasion, but an acknowledgement, a solemn recognition of Anna's true lineage and her integral role within a much larger ancient tapestry of tradition. The chief's utterance of her ancestral name, Tsala, meaning hidden root, was a profound bestowal of identity, a reclaiming of her heritage that resonated deeply with her own internal journey. This act underscored the importance of recognizing and honoring one's roots, even when those roots are intertwined with a history that has been deliberately obscured or suppressed. It highlighted the enduring strength that can be drawn from a connection to one's ancestral past, a source of identity that transcends external judgments and societal pressures. Mabel's subsequent decision to remain at the ranch, to abandon her aspirations in Santa Fe and dedicate herself to her father's well-being, represented a significant recalibration of her personal priorities. Her initial focus on material inheritance and external validation had been replaced by a deeper understanding of familial responsibility and the quiet, profound satisfaction derived from nurturing relationships. This shift was not a capitulation, but a conscious embrace of a different kind of wealth, one measured not in possessions, but in the strength of familial bonds and the quiet contentment found in caring for loved ones. Her actions demonstrated that true growth often involves a re-evaluation of what constitutes a fulfilling life, a recognition that genuine happiness can be found not in outward achievement, but in inward connection and selfless devotion. Asa's severance from his church fellowship, while a source of initial pain and social isolation, ultimately liberated him from the constraints of rigid dogma. His newfound faith, rooted in the tangible miracles of the blooming field and the quiet wisdom of Anna, was a more profound and personal form of spirituality. He had traded the pronouncements of a distant deity for a direct, experiential connection to the divine, found within the cycles of nature and the quiet strength of human compassion. This process illustrated the liberating power of questioning established doctrines and seeking truth through personal experience, a journey that often leads to a deeper, more authentic understanding of the spiritual realm. The land, in its silent, persistent way, became his cathedral, its unfolding miracles his scripture, and Anna, the conduit through which this revelation was made manifest. Reflecting on this journey so far, we witness a profound convergence of seemingly disparate elements, now woven into a cohesive tapestry of human experience. The initial isolation, once a stark landscape of individual solitude, has gradually yielded to a subtle yet undeniable interconnectedness. The whispers of suspicion that once threatened to engulf the present have begun to recede, replaced by a quiet hum of mutual recognition, a growing understanding that transcends superficial differences. The very air on the Piedra Serena ranch seems to carry a different quality now, imbued with the scent of resilience and the silent promise of renewal. In light of these unfolding insights, the path forward, though not yet fully revealed, becomes conceptually clearer. The seeds of doubt that were sown in the arid soil of tradition have yielded an unexpected harvest, challenging deeply ingrained perceptions and opening avenues for growth that were previously unimagined. This transformation is akin to a river, once confined to a narrow, predictable channel, now finding its way through a broader, more fertile valley, carving new landscapes of possibility with each passing season. The lessons learned are not discrete points to be catalogued, but rather the cumulative effect of lived experience, shaping a new understanding of strength and belonging. As we pivot towards the final reflection, consider the subtle yet powerful recalibration of perspective that has occurred. The initial fear of the unknown, the apprehension surrounding the unconventional, has given way to an appreciation for the hidden depths of wisdom that lie beyond the surface. The narrative arc has moved from a place of stark division to one of quiet integration, where the boundaries between the familiar and the extraordinary have begun to blur. This process of synthesis is not about erasing the past, but about understanding how its elements, when viewed through a lens of empathy and open-mindedness, can coalesce into a more profound and meaningful present. The cumulative effect of these experiences is akin to the gradual sharpening of focus in a photograph, where initial blurriness resolves into clear, vibrant detail, revealing the true essence of the subject. The year had etched its story onto the land, from the parched earth of summer to the nascent green of spring, and within that transformation, A deeper truth had taken root. The dust that had once clung to Anna like a shroud was now the very soil that nourished the vibrant life she had coaxed forth. Her scar, a silent testament to a past she no longer needed to hide, was now a mark of resilience, a map of her journey from alienation to belonging. The once feared witch, the outcast whispered about in hushed tones, had become the quiet anchor of a community slowly learning to embrace the extraordinary. The very air on the Piedra Serena ranch now carried the subtle fragrance of basil and the promise of healing, a sensory echo of the profound change that had taken place, not just in the fields, but in the hearts of those who lived there. Asa McCrae, his weathered hands now more accustomed to the gentle touch of a seedling than the cold grip of a rifle, had found a peace that transcended his earlier solitude. His faith, once tethered to the rigid doctrines of a distant congregation, had found a more profound and intimate expression in the silent language of the growing season and the quiet strength of human connection. He had learned that true divinity was not always found in grand pronouncements from a pulpit, but in the steadfast tending of life, in the quiet acts of compassion that ripple outwards, transforming barrenness into abundance. Mabel, her sharp edges softened by the unfolding events, had discovered a different kind of inheritance, one richer than any land or fortune. Her journey from distant ambition to present-day care for her father and the ranch was a testament to the transformative power of presence and the quiet, enduring strength of familial love. She had learned that the most valuable discoveries are often not unearthed in far-off cities, but in the familiar soil of one's own home, in the unspoken needs of those closest to us. The Apache elders, their silent wisdom a constant grounding presence, had offered not just a name, but a profound affirmation of belonging, a recognition that Anna's journey was not an aberration, but a continuation of ancient cycles. Their presence was a reminder that the land itself held memories, that its history was etched not only in its arid landscapes, but in the very souls of those who understood its rhythms. The 40 warriors, who had appeared not as a threat, but as a silent acknowledgement, represented the powerful, often unspoken connections that bind communities across generations and traditions. Their arrival was a testament to the fact that true strength often lies not in outward displays of power, but in the quiet, unified support of shared values and ancestral wisdom. The true practice begins now, not in the dramatic pronouncements of transformation, but in the daily, quiet cultivation of the seeds of understanding and compassion that have been sown. It lies in the willingness to see beyond the superficial, to recognize the inherent worth in those who differ, and to embrace the unexpected wisdom that can emerge from the most unlikely of sources. The story of Anna, of Asa, and of the land they shared is a gentle yet powerful reminder that resilience is not merely about enduring hardship, but about cultivating growth in its wake, about finding the hidden roots that anchor us, even in the most challenging of terrains. The enduring legacy of Piedra Serena is not in the sunflowers that bloom, but in the quiet, persistent lesson that every barren space holds the potential for life, and every outcast, the promise of belonging.